About 2 years ago at least now, I made the odd video where I repeatedly tried to get the message across to people that the SNPs' intention was to stop Brexit first and foremost. They were stringing people that wanted independence along, and if they failed or in their attempt to stop Brexit, they would then fall back on their mandate at the time. And this was before I really understood just how in bed with the United Nations, for example, the SNP were. Now I'm of the belief that I don't really think they want independence, even if they could get it. It's about retaining power at all costs. That's why every election cycle they continuously talk up independence and whatnot, and then deliberately conflate it with the EU after the fact. And their latest BS on their website is another example of that, clear as day. They keep repeating the same arguments over and over and over again, and their followers can't seem to understand that this is repetitive lies for the most part, to put it politely. So then they all go out and fight the SNP's corner for them, repeating this bollocks, and it just goes on and on and on and on. It doesn't matter how many times they get debunked, it doesn't matter how many times people try to point out the obvious, the same shit gets repeated again and again and again. SNP MP Stuart Big Boy MacDonald challenged the Tories' approach to EU nationals, criticising the way they'd been described as cheap, unskilled labour. But yet, on the other hand, we'll have Thin Lips or Ben McPherson talking about fruit pickers and working on building sites. When they refer to these people as unskilled, they're simply implying that anybody here could do their job. So it doesn't require looking to people out with the country to fill that job, per se. But of course, from the Panda Brigade at the SNP, that's not what it means at all. Beta Blatford, the Rainbow Unicorn Westminster leader, has dismissed claims of differences within his party over a second independence referendum, saying it's putting all its efforts into securing a poll this year. He lashed out at Boris Johnson's policies, which he said would harm Scotland's economic prosperity, and he witnessed the momentum for change up and down the country. So he says. Speaking exclusively to the National, the MP for Ross, Skye and Lochaber said, "The need for the SNP to provide leadership has never been greater. Here comes the grandstanding. What a shock. We have left the EU, well, we technically haven't yet. But the real change comes with existing transition at the end of 2020. Now, as I travel around Rainbow Unicorn land, businesses have a real concern that access to labour from EU workers coming to Scotland has been stopped by Boris Johnson at the end of this year. And what about all the years leading up to the point that Boris Johnson officially stops it? Why does that constantly just get left out and brushed under the rug? What is your excuse for all the years you people have been in power? It's very easy to claim that Brexit's to blame for all of your problems, but the reality of the matter is, nothing has been implemented yet, so what has stopped you? What is stopping you currently? Very easy to blame Boris Johnson for things that haven't occurred yet. Boris Johnson wasn't in office 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 12 years ago. I'm having conversation after conversation with those who have moved from a no to a yes. There is a recognition that an independent Scotland in Europe becomes a destination. So, no longer is it about independence, it's about simply hijacking the independence movement to avoid Brexit and rejoin Europe. So it's not independence, realistically, is it? It's temporary independence. It's gaining your independence from the UK to join Europe. But they cling to this idea that it's a continuation of 2014. It's not. Completely different. But yet the followers, a good portion of them, can't seem to see the difference between the two. Some of them go so far as to join in with the lies that are being peddled with this revisionist history. Him is with us. Let's not forget the Tories lost more than half of their seats in Scotland at the Westminster election on their campaign message of say no to IndyRev 2. And despite you people making several different campaign pledges, you couldn't even accumulate more than 50% of the electorate. So what does that say about you? Anyhow, on the other hand, the SNP's message of the people of Scotland having a right to choose our own future found support across Scotland. Yes, because you wasted all this time trying to stop Brexit that you didn't leave any time at all for you to be able to act upon your mandate. So you're trying to fleece the system and get one for free by piling pressure on Westminster. And It wasn't just that you ran that election on. Oh no, it was a vote for the SNP was a vote to stop Brexit, or a vote for the SNP to lock the Tories out of government. You know, it wasn't just about giving the people of Scotland a right to determine their own future. But speaking of that, what happened to that? Where did that go? All of a sudden it's Boris Johnson's fault again, because he didn't give you what you wanted. So yet again, the people voted for the SNP on false promises. Bradford said it was only a matter of time before Johnson accepted demands for IndyRev 2, and the SNP would bring the people of Scotland with it. And while you're waiting, why don't you convince the whole of the electorate to jump aboard the gravy train? What's stopping you people? Why are they deliberately holding back the information that could convince the people that aren't already convinced? Every single time somebody tries to get answers out of the SNP for the hypotheticals of the future in relation to IndyRev 2, they're quick to be met with dismissal, and the claims are always relating to getting the ability to hold a second independence referendum before having these conversations. Rather bizarre, if you ask me. You said Boris Johnson can't and will not be able to continue to say no. Well, he can, technically. He knows it and we know it. Is that so? Because you said prior to the election that if you won the election, this scenario that we're in currently wouldn't be occurring at all. And you would have already had the ability to hold your second independence referendum. Why did that not come to fruition? Yet again, passing the buck of blame. Stand together. Deepen and broaden our support. Get fucked. I'll get this. We know that sovereignty rests with the people of Scotland. But that roadmap towards independence means that we bring the people with us as we outline an inclusive offering, asking people to recognise that now is the time to complete the powers of the Parliament. But we do this by staying the course we're currently on. Get bored of blowing smoke up people's arses, Peter Blatford, no? First and foremost, the cheek of this man to bring up sovereignty when the SNP would be quite happy to throw all that sovereignty away at the drop of a hat to get back into the European Union, because that's what this is about, to try and glitter your bollocks with talk of independence. It's just a total farce. Even if you did want an independence referendum, it's not for Scotland to become an independent nation. It's about leaving the UK to avoid Brexit. That's all this is about. If the 2014 referendum had gone the opposite way, we would have been out of the EU. And I didn't hear you people crying and complaining and whining and doing what you do best now in 2015, 2014 even after the referendum, and 2016. It seemed that you people were quite content with how things were. You were quite content being part of the UK, so long as the UK voted to remain part of the EU. And I believe personally that you all thought that's exactly what was going to occur. And to your horror, to your dismay, it didn't work out the way that you thought it would. So you've done everything in your power for the best part of 4 fucking years now to completely revise history, lie through your teeth, and if all else fails, if you couldn't stop Brexit, jump on the independence train again to try and bullshit the electorate into believing it's a continuation of the first. It's fucking not. Of a new referendum, Peter Blatford added, if we cannot achieve it this year, and all our efforts are going to be on making sure that it is the case, but if we don't do it, then this is the backdrop to the 2021 election. Oh, what a shock. Planet would you have to be on to believe that there's even a slight possibility of obtaining a referendum by the end of this year? It's ridiculous. Again, I thought this was all supposed to have been achieved if you won the election. So why is it you're talking about the 2021 election now? Nobody knows what's in the pattern. Blatford also attacked the Tories' record of austerity over the last 10 years, which has led to rising inequality, child poverty and the use of food banks. How's that so? Yet again, blaming austerity for all the problems in Scotland. Blaming the Tories for all the problems in Scotland. Yes, that's right. This is the same party, though, of course, that see no issue with pumping millions into period poverty, millions to Malawi and Zambia and Pakistan, etc., under a climate justice initiative, pumping millions year on year into STEM for girls, getting more girls into sports, more feminist organisations in general, anti-racist organisations, the LGBT organisations such as Engender and Stonewall, etc., as well as the migrant and refugee organisations. I could go on. Millions and millions and millions pissed away on social justice, namby-pamby fucking policies and organisations, and they have got the audacity to sit there after the fact and blame austerity for inequality in our country. Benny Gilruth highlighted the growing need for Scotland to adopt its own immigration system. Oh, this'll be good, can't wait.
Jenny Gilruth, a points-based system has always been something that the SNP have kind of looked at in terms of an independent Scotland, haven't they?
It was a proposal in 2014, but I think to go back to the original question on immigration, yeah, of course we would want to have control over immigration in Scotland. And in terms of Shona's point about a hard border, it will not happen under a Scottish government. We are not enforcing any border. So if there's going to be a border, it'll come from a United Kingdom government led by the Conservatives.
It's such a stupid get-out clause that these people continuously peddle every time the talk of immigration is brought to the forefront. If the SNP's hypothetical future came to be and we ended up part of the EU whereas the rest of the UK didn't, it is inevitable there would have to be a hard border. Just because you say you wouldn't personally implement such a policy, it doesn't mean there wouldn't be one.
It's not from the Scottish Government. In terms of the proposals, it would have been late January when my predecessor, actually, Ben McPherson, sent the proposals to the United Kingdom Government. I don't even think they spent 2 hours reading it before they turned around and said, go away. They're not interested in negotiating on immigration. They're also not interested in listening to the devolved governments when it comes to Brexit. So I was in London earlier this week. We met with representatives from the Northern Ireland, from their executive, from Wales, from their government. 4 different political parties all being cut out of these negotiations by the UK government. And immigration is just another example of that.
Let me just, to be clear on this, you want complete control over immigration, but you also want EU membership, which would mean freedom of movement, complete freedom of movement for people. So in terms of any specific needs that Scotland has around migration, that would have to fit in with free movement of people.
Well, hang on a second. Stephen, we go back to 2016. Scotland voted to remain. 62% of people in Scotland want to stay in the European Union.
Wow. That's something you don't see every day. The presenter, to his credit, brought attention to a point that I've been making, or similar anyway, to what I've been making for months about what the SNP really wants when they talk about devolved immigration powers. By him pointing out the fact that they want to retain EU freedom of movement as well as obtaining devolved immigration powers, stands to reason that's for everybody else that's not part of the EU. And she noticed that there, to her credit. So what did she do? She dodged the question, pivoted to the bullshit of 62% of Scotland wanting to stay in the EU. These people are quick to claim that people have a right to change their mind and so on and so forth. And the vote was years ago, etc, etc. Well, by that logic, you could quite easily say that just because 62% voted one way in 2016, it doesn't indicate that they still feel the same way now. But second of all, and probably more importantly, there's something that always gets left out of that little conversation. Nicola Thinlips coming out specifically to tell her independent supporters that if they voted to leave, they wouldn't see a second independence referendum. So they all voted accordingly, and hey presto, Scotland, on paper, looks as if it wishes to remain part of the EU. Nothing to do with the fact she specifically told a certain demographic of her voters to vote that way. But no, of course not. It's because everybody wishes to remain part of the EU. Yes, that's the one. And the sheep clap. You'd think after almost 4 years, somebody somewhere on TV or wherever it may be, journalist-wise, would have called somebody out when they brought up that bollocks. But as I said, they can say and do as they please.